people have such an abject negative reaction to reading about angels, and especially demons. I think when people think of demons, they think of horror movies. And that's
Mhm.
not what my book is. There's nothing horror about it. And I always tell people, I get why you're a little bit afraid of delving into spiritual warfare, but don't think of it like a horror book.
Mm-mm.
As Christians, like like when it comes to sports, in order to defeat your opponent, you have to understand what their tactics might be. You have to sort of think ahead and be like, okay, what might they do so that we can defeat our enemy on the football field? Well, the same principle applies to spiritual warfare books. And as Christians, we need to understand the spiritual world that's going around us so that we can not be defeated by the enemy.
Welcome to the Bookish Introverts podcast. Join host Amazon bestselling author Brett Nelson and avid reader Melanie Dyer as they dive in to review books they've read, then chat with the amazing authors behind them. Quiet minds, big bookshelves. You don't want to miss it.
Hey everybody, it's Brett, and we are back today to bring you another great book discussion. And for those of you that are watching, you'll probably realize that something's a little bit different with the podcast today. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce my friend Nikki. She's an author friend of mine. She is guest hosting the podcast with me today. She's also an author. So we're going to talk a bit about all of her books and then one of her books in specific. So Nikki, say hi to everyone, and then I'll kind of explain what's going on to why we're different today.
Well, hi, Brett. I'm happy to be here, and it was short notice, and this is my first time ever podcast appearance. So it's
You're a podcast
crazy.
virgin.
Yes, I am. So let's see how
Well,
it goes.
the good thing is we can always start over if we really flub things up too much. So, but the good thing is we've never had to do that. So I think we're going to be good.
Perfect.
We're both
We got this.
we're both talkers, so I think we're going to got this covered. So what's going on today is last week we were supposed to record our next episode, and Melanie got sick, and so we put it off until today, and then or till this weekend. And this weekend, guess what? We have 8 inches of snow on the ground. And Nikki, you live in the South, so you know what that means. So we've got here where I am, we've got 8 inches of snow in the ground, which means our entire town is shut down until further notice. So so we didn't get to podcast, so we weren't going to be able to podcast today. So I told Melanie, and Melanie's she's better, but she's still a little bit under the weather. So she called me. She was like, well, she said I don't think the roads are going to be good enough for me to get there. Plus her voice was still really froggy, and I'm sorry, but I refuse to have a woman on the podcast whose voice is more masculine than mine. So I was like, okay. So I was like,
Ow.
so I know. So I was like, okay, so we're just going to I guess we're going to have to take another week off. I don't really like it, but we don't have a choice because Mother Nature is telling us what we can and can't do. And Melanie goes, well, you've talked about having some of your author friends on. And she said, maybe this will be a good time to do that. So I got to thinking about it, and I was like, well, the woman is right. I've got plenty of friends I could call on. And the first person that came to mind was you, because you have a Blizzard themed book. And I thought, what a perfect book when, although we didn't have a blizzard, we do have 8 inches of snow on the ground, which for Southern Arkansans is basically a blizzard. So that's what's going on with us. Melanie will be back, but graciously literally yesterday, I emailed Nikki yesterday and it was like, hey girl, I need a podcast host. What are you doing tomorrow? And it took her like 3 hours to respond. And I was like, she is ignoring me because she doesn't want to do this. She doesn't want to get out of her comfort zone. But you finally called me back. And so here we are.
Yes, here we are.
Yeah.
Heart fluttering, going,
Well, I'm telling you, I am extremely nervous too, because Melanie's my right arm on this podcast. We've got to where we've worked together enough on the podcast that we sort of can read each other. And so I feel like I'm missing my right arm because my partner in crime's not here. But again, we're going to get through this. So that's what's going on with us. So I'm going to give just a little bio on Nikki, because there may be people that don't know her work. And part of the podcast is we're going to do a little bit of chatter about this and that has nothing to do with books. And then, so I want readers to know what she writes, because hopefully they're going to want to check her work out. So, and before we get into the bio, the series that we're reading today is the Southern Storms. Is it Southern Storms series?
Yes.
The Southern Storm series. And she writes the series of books under the pen name Lexie Nicholas. Her real name is actually Nikki Cochran, and she writes another series of books under her name. And a little bit later in the podcast, we're going to talk about why you chose to write under pen names. But for the purposes of this podcast, even though the series is written under Lexie, we are going to refer to her as Nikki because that's her real name, and that was more comfortable for her, and it's for me too because I know her as Nikki. So halfway through the podcast, I would probably be calling you Nikki anyway. So that's just what we decided to do. Yeah. So okay. So Lexie Nicholas, aka Nikki Cochran, is an author and reader of cozy and sweet small town romances. Her favorite authors are Debbie Maycumber, Jenny Colgan, and Nicholas Sparks. You got good taste in reading.
Thank you.
She likes to read and write stories about regular people struggling to make it through life and make it to the end. Of course, and of course, when they make it to the end, love conquers all. She lives in Alabama with her husband and loves writing books. And Brett, put on your glasses for heaven's sake. I can't read my own writing. She lives in Alabama with her husband and loves writing books centered on Southern living. She's a sucker for Hallmark movies, and her books. She's got 5 books in the Southern Storm series, which include Floodwaters, which is a reader magnet. Is that right? So
it's a reader magnet, so you can get that for free.
Okay, yeah, you can't buy that off Amazon, I believe, but you can get it by subscribing to your what do you call it?
Mailing list.
Mailing list. Yeah, thank you. Hurricane Beach, Twist of Fate, Firewatch, and then Christmas Blizzard, which is the book we're going to focus on today. So, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, we're so happy to be here. Yeah, we're happy to have you on. So I first discovered your work probably about 2 years ago, and I found one of your books. You and I both promote our books on some of the same platforms, like Book. I can't remember which one I found you on because I promote my books on so many. But I found one of your books, and it was on discount for 99 cents or $1.99.
Right.
And so the first thing that drew me to your book was it had a tornado on it. And I was like, okay, it's got a tornado on it. That is a book I have to read. And so, and a lot of your books all of your books in the Southern Storm series are centered around storms. The first one's a hurricane, and I think Twist of Fate is the one that I first, I picked that one up, but that's number 2 in the series. So I thought, okay, well, I got to read book number 1. So I picked up Hurricane Beach, read that, loved it, then moved on to Twist of Fate. And then of course, Firewatch is about a forest fire. I haven't read that one yet. Is it about a forest fire? Yeah, a forest fire, which it's very relevant today. I'm sure most people have heard what's going on in LA. My heart just breaks for those people. So we're praying and keeping those people in our thoughts and prayers. And then Christmas Blizzard. And anyone that knows me knows I am a huge Christmas person. So yeah, in a little bit, we're going to talk about why you wrote Christmas Blizzard. So to get started, why don't you tell us why you chose to write about weather patterns in a series? I'd be interested to hear that.
Gosh, that's because I'm just such a weather nut. Yeah, I mean, if you hear like any kind of severe weather warnings, I mean, we have plenty of those here in the South, but every time I hear that weather alarm go off, it's like, oh, where is it? And then just So that's, I mean, my husband says, it's like, Nikki, you're crazy. Stop wishing for bad weather. It's like, oh, no, but it's so exciting.
I do the same.
I mean, I don't want anybody to get hurt,
Yes.
I mean, I just love the display of Mother Nature, I mean, it's just so awesome what nature can do,
Yeah.
and
And
as long as nobody gets
there's
hurt,
such a cool feeling in the air during storms. I don't know what it
Yeah,
is, but it's just there's an excitement. I don't know. I know a lot of people are scared of it, but to me, it's so
yeah,
exciting. Again, I don't like the hail. I don't like the tornadoes because that
nope.
is damaging. But in general, I just love it. So anyway, so yeah, go ahead.
Remember like when I was a kid, well, you wouldn't remember, but when I was a kid, when we had a thunderstorm coming, I would stand outside and just wait for the gust, put my arms out and just let it,
Oh, I
I was
love that.
pretending I was flying away, and
Yeah.
just get that strong gust go.
Yeah.
And
Feel
then
the
then the
wind
lightning
whooshing
and the
around
thunder would
you.
start. Oh gosh,
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And so actually, I'm from Germany originally, right? So when I got married to my husband, he was in the army, active duty at that time. Our first duty station was in Fort Stewart, Georgia, and actually, a lot of my books, actually, well, yeah, all of them, or take part in like in the Savannah area. It's like small town outside of Savannah, Georgia.
Mhm.
So, but anyway, coming to the States, we at first before we got military housing, we had to stay in a little trailer, mobile home, until our name came up on the housing list, and we got to move into real housing. And so in the summertime, all of a sudden, all this weather was coming up, and we had thunderstorm warnings, tornado warnings, and all that stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was so scared, and then I started getting into it. I started reading about it. Okay, what do you do when there is a tornado watch? What do you do when there's a tornado warning? And all
Yeah.
that. Yeah. And then that's how I got so fascinated by it, because I didn't see that kind of weather, and not to that extreme at that
Yeah.
time back in
Yeah.
Germany, so
Yeah.
it's interesting. Yeah. And so I got hooked, from then
Did
on.
they
I actually,
have tornadoes and stuff in Germany? Do they have weather? They don't
they
have
do
weather like
now.
that? They do now? Okay.
Yeah. And it's more widely reported, because I think back then, like, it's like aging myself, but in the 70s and 80s, it's like there wasn't so much weather coverage, and the technology
Yeah.
wasn't there to pick all that up.
Well, and
And
you didn't
now,
have the internet back then, so
yeah,
basically all you had was the TV and radio. So, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. For those of
yeah,
younger listeners, believe it or not, there was a time when there was no internet.
yes,
Yeah. Uh,
yeah. So, and
so your
that's
love of storms kind of made you want to write the book centered around that.
right. And tidbit right here. I actually wanted to take meteorology in college. So I was gonna get into that program, but then
I think
it's
I missed my
just hard
calling
to
on that.
do. Yeah. So then it just kind of life got in the way, and then everything changed, and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
I still have that passion for
Good.
weather.
Yeah.
So,
It's just, yeah, it's so fun. I know a lot of people are scared of it, but I just find it so exciting. Years ago, when I lived in Oklahoma City, I had just moved into my very first apartment. And I don't think I even had like a complete set of furniture yet. I just, it was
mhm.
very sparse. And we had a huge tornado, like a huge tornado, thunderstorms, all that. And of course, I love storms. So mom called me and she was like, get off your patio and go inside. I'm not here to watch after you to make sure you're okay. And I'm like, how did you know I was outside on the patio? She was like, because I know you. And like literally, like a tornado, I didn't see it. I didn't find out till later, but literally a tornado flew over my apartment complex while I was out there. Yeah. So yeah. So I for years I have loved that kind of weather too. So you mentioned Germany. I want to talk
Mhm.
about that a little. Your Nikki Cochran series of books is sort of cozy paranormal books. Is that right? I
Yeah,
haven't read them yet. Yeah, cozy
yeah.
paranormal.
And they're
And
sweet.
yeah, they're not, yeah, and they're situated in Heidelberg, Germany. So, and I think you hit on that earlier. So I was kind of curious as to how you guys wound up in Heidelberg because of the military, I guess. And how
Yeah,
long
yeah.
were
My
you there?
husband, yeah, my husband, he had orders to go to Bavaria, which is southern Germany, but it's about 3 hours away from my hometown. I'm originally from Heidelberg, from that area, and then yeah, so we used to go home every long weekend we had. We just made that 3 hour trip, and then I hung out with my parents, and my daughter actually moved back to Germany as well. So she's living there right now. And
And you're
yeah,
going back there next week?
I'm going back
Yeah,
next week.
yeah, to
Yeah, so I
Heidelberg,
get
to
to
Heidelberg.
see, yeah, well, close in that area.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just like suburbs, like town over, so.
Yeah. Fun
But
little
I'm
side
excited.
note. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm excited because I told everybody, hey, while I'm there, I'm gonna go back up to the castle. That's every time I go over there, I'm gonna go up to the castle.
Okay,
Yeah,
what's the castle?
the Heidelberg Castle is
Oh, okay.
actually it's so Heidelberg has like a couple hills, they're not, I mean, considering to Colorado, I mean, the Rockies, it's
Yeah,
just a
yeah,
tiny hill,
yeah.
but it's surrounded by hills. And on the hill by the river is a castle ruin, and it's beautiful, and every time I go up there, it feels like I'm stepping into a different time. And
Mhm.
I mean, it's just awesome. You can just kind of get yourself into that mode. It's like where you think it's like, oh, I wonder what life was when this was an active castle, when there was
Yeah.
royalty living there. And yeah, so it's just beautiful. If
Oh, cool.
anybody who's listening to this, if you get a chance to go to Heidelberg or either to Germany, stop by in Heidelberg and go up the castle. And bonus,
Okay.
if you get to go during Christmas time, they have the most beautiful Christmas markets down there. So,
Fun. If I can find a picture of it online, is it called Heidelberg Castle? I'll flash a picture of it so the
sure.
YouTube listeners, watchers can at least see it.
Yes.
So, okay, I'll do that. That sounds interesting. A little interesting little side note, my cover designer lives in Germany. So
Oh,
I'm
cool.
not sure what part, but yeah, she lives in Germany. So, oh, so
Nice.
yeah. So fun little story about how Nikki and I met. So, or how we came to know each other. We came to know each other through my blog. So after I read your book, I read the Hurricane one and Twist of Fate. I reached out to you and was like, "Oh my gosh, I loved your books." And this was back in the day when when blogs were a little bit more popular. And so,
Hmm.
and at the time, I had a blog on my author website where I interviewed authors. So I was like, "Hey, would you like to come on and like I'd like to interview you?" And it was just a written blog. That was back before vlogs were a thing. And so that's kind of how we got to know. And we've kind of have kept in touch for all these years after that. So if you want to go to my website, brettnelsonauthor.com, you can also read the blog that I had with Nikki all those years ago. So, yeah, I'm kind of glad that we've stayed friends all these years. We've talked on the phone a few times, and every once in a while we'll text each other pictures. If we've got a nice storm blowing through, we'll text each other pictures of lightning or like mean, ominous looking clouds. So, yeah, so I'm glad we got to know each other all those years ago.
Oh yeah, it's like I remember. It's like one time I was doing a quick little video or something, and then I was just there's like crazy lightning going on outside, and then power went out. It's like, oops, power went out, and send that to you. It's funny,
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
well, thank God it didn't last that long. The power was back like a couple minutes later. It's like, thank you, underground wiring.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like not
exactly.
like the old days, when it snapped the power poles, and then you were out of power for a while.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
exactly. So how long have you like had kind of a love for storms? It was like, has that been like since childhood or
yeah,
d-
yeah.
yeah,
Since I was little, and I just always thought it was really cool to watch lightning, and I didn't like how it just kind of goes across the sky, and
yeah, Yeah.
like big clouds rolling in. It's just awesome. Yeah.
It's
So
amazing. It really is an awesome display of God's power. Just
yes.
to just there's so much power behind them, but there's an odd sense of beauty to them too, and it's
Hmm.
just it's amazing. So now you're in. Do you guys have snow on the ground right now, or did that miss you guys, or is it coming?
Nope.
No. Okay.
Nope, none. Well, we had winter watch, no, winter weather advisories, like in our area. So I'm close to Montgomery.
Uh huh.
So we're central Alabama. A
Mm,
couple of counties north of us, they got snow. We just got a little bit of sleet yesterday morning. Yeah, so it wasn't really anything. I woke up like in the middle of the night and I looked outside, and I checked the radar, and I had like a couple blue spots like really close to where I live, and then I looked outside and it's like, nope, nothing. Because I love to see some snow. I don't want to be driving in it, but I had plenty
yeah.
of that when we lived in Colorado. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't miss that. But I just love it when we get a fresh
Yeah.
layer of snow, and just it's
Now,
beautiful.
when it happens for you guys there, are you guys does it kind of lock you in, or are they more, or are they better at stuff like that where you live?
It's a hot mess when it
Yeah,
snows here. It's
yeah,
like nobody is used to driving in snow,
yeah.
and everybody has summer tires. I mean, because it's like we don't need winter tires.
Because it's
So
summer 10 months
so
out of the year.
and there is no traction. With those tires that we're driving on,
Uh-huh.
and the cities are not prepared,
Yeah,
to clear the roads or to just put the icer down. Sometimes it's like some spots they get some sand or so, but
yeah.
it it's like all like literally all hell breaks loose if we get
Literally,
actually a little bit like a dusting off snow.
literally.
It's
Yeah,
hilarious.
and I know the Northerners think we are the biggest weenies they have ever
Yeah.
seen. Because literally, like we can get just a little bit of snow, but around here, and it may be the same for you in Alabama, around here, a lot of times we don't get as much snow as we get ice. A lot of times we get ice more than snow, or we'll get a whole bunch of ice with a few little flakes of snow on top of it, which makes for treacherous driving. But in the South, I think up north, they've got very sophisticated machinery and stuff, so they can have 6 feet of snow on the ground and still go around life as normal, but around here, we're lucky if we get snow even once a year, like an appreciable
Yeah.
snow. The last 2 or 3 years, we've kind of, I say we're lucky. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I think we're kind of lucky the last 2 or 3 years that we've had a good, at least one good snow every year for the last 2 or 3 years. But around here, since we don't get it that often, we just don't. Our towns around here just don't have the equipment they need to really do a decent
Mhm.
job. They ice the roads, and they do have the scraper things that drive down,
Right.
but it's just, yeah, we're just not equipped for it. And when we have any amount of snow or ice that covers the road and freezes, we're stuck in the house for days. So, yeah. So, and I don't know about how it is down there. You let the weatherman say snow, people rush in the bedroom, put on their pajamas to go to town and get groceries. And yes, you heard me right. People
In your
wear their pajamas.
pajamas.
Drives me absolutely insane. Have a little class, people. They
Yes.
put on their pajamas, and go out and buy a month's worth of groceries for snow that's going to be gone in 2 days. I mean, but
Or in our case, like that afternoon. Yeah.
oh, and literally, yeah, we have literally had it where it's like has snowed, and then like by that afternoon it's gone because it
Hmm.
snows and then it's 50 degrees. So
Right.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, so it's yeah, snow and ice in the South is, and I'm using air quotes, fun because it's really more chaos than anything. So, but
And
oh,
it's
I love
it's
it.
fun if you're used to it, if you've lived somewhere where it's common, and then you're just like, seriously.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just entertained by it. I
Yeah,
mean,
me too.
it's a real thing, you know. I mean, yes,
Yeah.
if you don't have experience driving in the snow or anything, you know, and it's like, yeah, I get it. It's like
Yeah.
terrifying.
Yeah, and there's a
Yeah.
meme going on social media here now, where it's like, "Okay, people, there's snow on the ground, stay home. We'll talk about you driving in the snow when you can actually drive in when the roads are clear," or something like that. It's hilarious because it really is true. People in the South really, if you don't need to get out, you need to stay home because we just don't have we don't know how to drive in that stuff because we don't get it that often. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's switch over to pen names. Let's talk a
Okay.
little bit about why you decided to write under two different pen names.
It was actually a strategic decision. Yeah, I mean, of course, then you have double the work because you have to maintain both, you know, your real name as an author and then
Mm.
the one with a pen name, you know, and um the see, I started out with my first series, the Spirits in Waiting,
Mm-hmm.
the one about you know that takes place in Heidelberg, you know, my hometown castles. So it has ghosties in there. So it has a touch of paranormal slash mystery, you know. So um and it's a clean love story, you know. So I could have just combined them both and just publish them both under the
Yeah.
same name, you know. But then I thought, you know, a lot of people that read small sweet romances, clean and wholesome romances, yeah,
Yeah.
they're um it's like
You're marketing
many
to
are
two totally different people.
yeah, yeah. In the problem is, you know, with the paranormal stuff, um also, you know, it's really hard to market because I write sweet romance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so in regular paranormals, they're a little bit more steamy usually, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not what I want, you know. So I
Yeah.
wanted to write it started out with the Heidelberg Ghost, you know. I just wanted to write a nice um wholesome romance, you know, that has ghosts in it, you know, just and how fun is that, you know, and just like
Exactly. Yeah.
woman falls in love with a ghost, you know, she didn't know it at first, you know, but then as they
Mm-hmm.
get to know each other and she helps him solve the mystery why he is actually still here on earth, yeah, and you know, turns out it was a curse, you know, it's like
Mm.
400 years ago, and you know, and she has to help him move on, you know. But how can she do that, you know? It's like falling in love with him, you know. And it's like, can she would she even want to solve that mystery because they've gotten so close, you know, and they enjoy each other's company so much. And it's almost like, what happens when we solve this mystery, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Will I ever see you again, you know,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And so going back to, you know, even though it's sweet romance, um you know, it's like a lot of readers of my regular small town romance series, you know, a lot of them are religious, and the mention of ghosts or anything of the
Yeah.
supernatural,
Yeah.
and it's just kind of, it's like, oh, I don't want to have anything to do with it. It's the devil. Yeah, it's like,
Yes.
no, but if you actually read it, you know, it's nothing. Uh, you know, nothing, how would I describe that best? It's not that it's evil spirits, you
Yeah.
know, it's just
It's
then it's,
sweet.
yeah, and it's wholesome, you know, and it's a feel good kind of story. And you just kind of go along, you know, and help them figure out
Yeah.
the mess
Yeah.
that he's in,
And
you
one
know,
of
get
these
him out of his
days, yeah,
predicament.
yeah, yeah. One of these days, I'm going to read that series of books because I love reading paranormal books, but there's just not an abundance of them in Christian fiction, you know. And I have gotten to where I tend to read more Christian fiction now because I still read secular fiction,
Hmm.
clean secular fiction, but I get so tired of all the profanity and all the nastiness. It's like
Me too.
secular authors seem to think you have to write filth for it to be entertaining. And I get
Mm-mm.
there's a market for that. There's a lot of people that like that. Um, so I need to read that series because I love paranormal books. And I kind of do get that same kind of uh, because I wrote a spiritual warfare. I have a series, a 2-book series, a duology, and especially when I'm at book signings, when people find out that it's spiritual warfare, they're like, "Oh, no, ooh, ooh, no, I'm scared of
Hmm.
that," and I'm like, it's
But it's
about,
so good. The book is
oh, thank
so
you.
good.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was like, got sucked into it, and I was reading it, and I was halfway listening to it on my way to work every day. And then when I got home, I finished back on my Kindle and started reading. And
yeah.
then I called you up or texted you and say, "What's happening here? What did you do this for?" I
I
got all
know.
mad at him. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had several
It's
of
hilarious.
those. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's so funny how people react to stuff like that because it's angels and demons. Guess what? Angels
It's
and
in the
demons are
Bible.
real. We
Hmm.
don't see them. I mean, there are some people that claim they do. I'm not real sure how I feel about that. That they've had experiences with them. Maybe they have. I'm not judging, and saying that whatever you've experienced is not true. But I'm like, people have such an abject negative reaction to reading about angels, and especially demons. And I guess
Yeah.
I can get it in a way because I think when people think of demons, they think of horror movies. And that's
Hmm.
not what my book is. It's
No.
not a horror book. There's nothing horror about it. And I always tell people, I say, okay, I get why you're a little bit afraid of delving into spiritual warfare, but don't think of it like a horror book. It's not Stephen King.
Mm-mm.
As Christians, like when it comes to sports, in order to defeat your opponent, you have to understand what their tactics might be. You have to
Mhm.
understand, you have to sort of think ahead and be like, okay, what might they do so that we can defeat our enemy on the football field? Well, the same principle applies to spiritual warfare books. And as Christians, we need to understand the spiritual world that's going around us so that we can not be defeated by the enemy. And so
Right.
so it's when I put it like that, people are like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I guess I get it." And then sometimes they still walk away because I can tell they're still, about it, which is fine. I get it's not
Yeah.
everyone's cup of tea. But yeah, yeah. So I'm looking forward to reading your book one of these. And I've been saying that for years. I really just need to go ahead and do it because I love paranormal, but it's just so hard to find in Christian fiction. And the ones I've read they're usually nasty. So
Yeah. No.
sometimes I wind up not finishing them.
And that's what prompted me to, it's like that's how I got the idea to start writing, because we were stationed in Germany that time, and I was looking for some books, and so I was looking in um well, they didn't have much for a bookstore in a small town that we were at, so we had the PX, which is our military store, and they had like a small book section, and it was very small at that time, so I was like,
Yeah.
man, there's nothing in there that really interests me. And then I went to the German bookstores, and I looked around and see what I find. It's something that uh, got me interested in reading it, and I was like, no, it's not really what I'm looking for, so I said, you know what? I just write the book that I want to read. And
Yes.
that's how that idea got born, So
Yeah.
um,
What I
I,
want to read is not out there, so I'm going to create it.
yeah, in that way it makes me happy, and maybe then once I finished it, and I was like, well, maybe I can find a way to publish it so other people can read it, maybe that's
Yeah.
something someone is interested in, I'm sure there's I mean, you can find readers for any book,
Yeah.
and it's just you have to figure out how to find the right people, the right
Yeah.
audience
How to
for it.
market it so they'll find it.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm still struggling with that one because, I mean, again, paranormal, yeah, is just more, I would say, more younger audience,
Mm-hmm.
and again, steamier, and
Yeah.
so if you have one that's, uh, yeah, I was thinking more cozy mystery because it has mystery parts in it, so I tried to market it more
Yeah.
this way. It was kind of tough, and so then I just later on I decided, to just do small town romance because I love my Hallmark movies and the
Yeah.
other like there's other channels now that popped up, so you got more variety and even
Yeah.
Netflix got into it. Yeah, and so I was like, oh, let me
There's a
just
niche
go.
there.
Yeah. And so I started writing the Southern Storm series, and it actually caught on a little bit better, and it's like, I love writing those. Yeah, let's keep going. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
and again, so that's, and then to separate it, I just figured, it's probably the best if I separate into a pen name, and that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
because if you see them side by side, one's a little darker than the other, but it's, yeah, so
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, no.
You kind of need that degree of separation when you're writing
Mhm.
such drastically different style, even though they're similar
It's not
styles because
drastic,
they're
yeah.
cozy. Yeah, they're just
Mhm.
one's smoochy romance and uh, one's kind of
It still
it's
is,
still the
yeah. It's
romance, but it just
emotional,
has the little paranormal. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and the emotions are still there in both ways, on both, I mean, they fall
Yeah.
for each other,
Yeah.
and you always, I'm a big uh fan of happily ever after. If there's no
Yeah.
happy ending, why did I read this book then? It's
Yeah.
like, no, that's the biggest disappointment ever.
Yeah.
If I don't have a happy ending that makes me feel good, then I was like, I don't know if I want to keep reading, that
Yeah.
author,
Yeah.
but if I have something like some sense of closure and it's somewhat happy, if I get that emotion, then I'm satisfied after reading this book and it does not leave me hanging anyway, so
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. S-
that's a plus,
So you
so I
get what you paid for.
mhm,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and that's what readers like. They like to get what they paid for. So, and when I first started, I kind of wanted to go. I'm kind of a go against the grain kind of guy. I'm not the kind of guy that likes to do what everyone else is doing. If everyone else is wearing a red shirt, I'm probably going to wear a blue one. That's just kind of how I am.
yeah,
And when I wrote my second book, it's called Lost Song, and it was probably my most romancy song. It's not smoochy, but it was probably my most romance-centric book, but I didn't do the typical thing that readers would expect, and girl, oh my gosh, I got so many irate emails from people, "How dare you not have them get together in the end," and, like, I had him get together with.
spoiler alert.
Yeah, exactly. I
It's
had
like,
him get together with the other person that I wanted him to be with, and, like, people were so mad about it, I wound up rewriting it, and it annoys me that I even did it, but I wound up rewriting it, and because I'm like,
yeah,
readers want the cookie cutter, "This is what's supposed to happen, by golly, it better happen," and I'm kind of a twisty
mhm,
guy. I love when books don't do exactly what I think. I don't find it troublesome if this person realizes, "Oh, you know what? I'm in love with this person," but through the process of the journey, we realize we're not right for each other for whatever. I think that's an interesting story, but readers do not like that. They
but
want
we
cookie
want the
cutter.
happy ending,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, but apparently, and I still thought he got a happy ending because he wound up with somebody that he learned to love, but I wound up rewriting it because the few emails I got from people, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you didn't have him end up with her." And I actually wound up rewriting it because I'm like, I can't market a book that
yeah,
people are not happy with the ending. So So what do you think about we may transition into a little bit of author talk, and then we're gonna get into your book. Um,
Okay.
what do you feel about, and I know you as an author probably heard it too, we're kind of told, um, write what you know, and you'll find your tribe that of readers that want to read that too. But there's also the write to the trends. What are your opinions on that? What do you think?
I almost got caught up in this, It's like, because when they had all this billionaire romance stuff going on,
Yeah,
uh,
not a fan of those.
me neither,
And they're a
so
dime a dozen.
yes. And it's like, okay, you can make a lot of money, if you write a good billionaire romance because that's what's hot right now.
Yeah.
Or not right now, I don't know if it's so much anymore, but um, yeah, if, you know, and I'm thinking, it's like, okay, how can I find a happy medium? It's like, how can I find like what's in the bestseller list right now?
Mhm.
So if I'm working on trying to figure out what I want to write next, yeah. So okay, what's a trending right now? But then I'm going, it's like, would I see myself writing this type of story, or would this be too far fetched from what I do? In my branding, so
Mhm.
small town romances with storms in it, or something similar to that. Maybe the storms are just going to be small,
Uh-huh.
but there's always going to be a storm in there.
Y yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, at least in the southern storms. Well, in under Lexie, yeah. So
Yeah.
and so I'm thinking, it's like, okay, what would I be comfortable writing that could be to trend, but does not, compromise anything.
Yeah.
It's like, what is, what topics, or how can I work this in the
Yeah.
books that I want to write
It's
and
almost
still
like writing to trend, but still having
be true to
your
yourself.
own unique spin on it.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And to me, just putting stories together, it's like a puzzle. It's like, okay, so I want this to happen. It's got to have this in there. And then it's
Uh-huh.
just like a big puzzle trying to piece it together. And
Yeah.
I love doing that,
It's so
and
fun, isn't
just,
it? Yeah.
there's like, I love plotting stories. I like to know where I'm going to
Uh-huh.
in the story as I'm writing. So when
Yeah.
I'm sitting down the next day, it's okay. This scene is gonna be next. I'm gonna talk about this, 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 and this, or not talk about this. Is not
Yeah.
nonfiction, but
Yeah.
this is gonna happen, and those are the reasons why this has to happen, just to move the story forward. So I don't want to get bogged down in anything. So I kind
Uh-huh.
of have a guide that takes me which way I want to go. So um, and then just sit down the next day, look over my little outline, what needs to happen, and then I start writing, watch the film in
Yeah.
my head going on, sometimes I have to rewind. It's like, wait a minute, this didn't sound right. Rewind.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it keeps going
Yeah.
again. So that's my process there. But knowing what I want to build into the story, yeah, and what to focus on, and um, that just kind of helps me with the writing process. And I
Mhm.
understand you're a little bit different in
I
that regard.
am. Yeah, that's one thing I had written down for us to talk about. There's this author conundrum out there about whether you're a plotter or a pantser. And for those of you listening who may not be authors and don't know what that is, plotters plot every little detail before they write the book, and there are pantsers, which basically they don't plot a thing and they fly by the seat of their pants. And people, whatever side of the spectrum they stay on, they are religious to that method. And so it sounds like you are more on the heavy plotting side of the spectrum.
Totally.
See, I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm not a heavy plotter, but I'm not a total fly by your pants city guy. I do when I write. I like to know, of course, how it's going to start. I like to know how it's going to end. I like to know any major plot points that are going to happen. I like to know any subplots that are going to be going on in the book. But I don't plot every single chapter before I start. So yeah, so I think I'm somewhere kind of in the middle. I know, I know.
I can't. I can't.
Yeah. So
How do you do
how long does it take you to plot a book?
Well, I start with a general outline, and I just go from broad and then just fine tune it. And then it's like, okay,
Yeah.
then I have a scene,
Builder.
sheet
Uh-huh.
kind of thing. And, there's a book, was it, Story? I have to look and see if I find Story Genius is
Oh.
real. So that book helped me getting that process down because it, uh, shows you how to build a scene and how to um, put emotional impact in there, make it deeper,
Oh.
so you can,
Text me the
uh,
name of that book. I may pick it up.
I, I will.
Yeah.
And even you can do that, like after I bought that book and read it, and I was just editing a book. So I went, as I was going scene by scene, doing my editing, and then I said, okay, let me print out one of these sheets and go through the scene. It's like, okay, so what happens? What's the external event? And then how does what's the consequence of what happened? And
Mm-hmm.
then why is this important and
Yeah.
to the person whose head we're in that scene, and
Yeah.
then how will that person react? And then you get that, and then which will lead you in the next scene or like a scene down the line, where you continue that thread. So this is how I learned how to connect my scenes and how to make them richer. Yeah,
Yeah.
and just how to put some more emotion in it and some more impact. Yeah,
Yeah.
um, and that, I started plotting my books, you keeping that in mind, and then each scene I'm gonna, okay, what's the broad stuff that happens in this scene, and then I just go on and
Yeah.
um yeah. Yeah. What was the original
It's
question?
it
Where were we going?
it's a process. I think we were talking about plotting versus pantsing, yeah. But yeah, either
What are
way
you
you do it, it's a process. So
right?
I've got one more authory type thing that I want to quickly discuss, then we'll move into the book. Um,
Okay.
as for me, writing books is a learning process. There is a learning curve to it. You know, because and we talked about this briefly last night. I don't have any author mentors that are really established in their careers that are really, selling millions of books that can sort of lead me in the direction, so I have learned everything that I've learned basically on my own. I've just figured it out. Everything from editing to book covers to, internal, formatting, just everything. So, what are some things that you have learned, like from the first time you wrote your book to now? What are some important lessons that you've learned? Maybe some things that you've learned don't work, or you know what I'm saying? What are some
Yeah.
things that you've kind of learned in over the years of writing?
Well, one important one is editing.
Yes.
Is super important. So, I mean, I did like when I got my first book out, and I did a lot of self editing and used
Yeah.
some software and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this is good, and then people kept going, it's like, oh, there's some spelling errors and grammar, and it's like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so I forked out a couple $100, to have somebody edit it, and I was so shocked with just like all this
Yeah.
red, and that was supposed to be um on a manuscript that I had edited, and
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
stuff I missed. I mean, some of it wasn't things that I missed, but I guess my German was coming through a little bit, so we had
Yeah,
to work on that a little bit, and some grammar. And it's like, oh man, it's just so disheartening when you see your manuscript come back all marked up.
it
But
is.
I
But in a
figured,
way, it's exciting because you're like, oh, thank goodness, I'm not going to get dinged in reviews. So, yeah.
well, I
Although
did.
you probably still are, but for different reasons. Yeah.
Yeah, but I did get dinged like early on, so
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
so I finally paid for one, and I think that's the most important part of it, because nothing can um, discourage a reader from reading your
Yeah.
other books, if it's something preventable as
Yeah.
a bad editing,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
So
let me tell you, I
I,
learned that lesson the hard way too in my first two books. I thought because I used Pro Writing Aid and Word Spell Check that I was good. And plus I did 5 or 6. No, if there's anyone out
yeah,
there that's beginning you do need an editor. You do need an editor. You
you
cannot
do.
self-edit your own work because your mind reads what you think is there. And I think just when you've written a book and then the more you edit it, you get bored with your own work when you've read it 5 or 6 times, and
Hmm.
your mind looks over. I think it reads what it thinks is there. You miss stuff. So yes, you do need an editor. Never think you don't need an editor.
Yeah, and I mean, you don't see your mistakes
You
anymore.
don't.
I mean, it's just kind of like I read this a million times. How come I didn't see it?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
and even I mean, editors are not superhuman either. I
No,
mean,
no.
they miss stuff, and I've been catching a couple things here and there, and then and
Yeah.
that's the cool thing about being an indie author. I can just go in and fix it and upload a fresh version of the book, and
Yeah.
then the error is gone,
Yeah.
and whereas, if you're a traditional publisher, or if you're traditionally published, then yeah, good luck, with getting any of that fixed, because what's
Uh,
out there is out there. They're not gonna
exactly.
change it
Yeah.
out. Mm-mm.
No, they're not going to. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a cool thing about being an indie author, is that you are in control. You can do whatever you want with your books. If a
Yeah.
tactic doesn't work, then you just kind of switch it out and try
And try
something
something
new.
else.
Try a
Hmm.
new cover. Try and yeah, just change your blurbs, like your book description on the websites and on Amazon and stuff. You can change all that, which is
Yeah.
awesome.
And I have seen petty reviews, not on my books, thankfully, but like I typically don't read reviews because I want to decide if I want to read a book because I don't need other people's opinions to decide if I want to read a book or not. If I want to read it,
Hmm.
I read it. But I do tend to read reviews after I read the book just because I kind of like to see what people thought of it after I've read it. And I've seen several reviews where readers are irate because they found a typo on, like in an
Yeah.
80,000 page book, they found one typo. And last year, on my last book, I paid thousands of dollars to an editor because I learned
Wow.
real quick, and I had to go back and pay to have my first two books professionally edited because, like I said, I didn't think I needed it, and so I'm like, I don't want to do that again. I've got too many stories in my head. I don't want to have to go back and work on books I've already written. I want to focus on what I want to do next. So last year, I paid, as usual, thousands of dollars to have a professional editor edit my book. And then I always have saved one of my beta readers uh, to edit, to do a final beta read after the professional editor's done with it, just to make sure. She found like 6 errors that the professional editor missed.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Ugh." Yeah. So, I mean,
It
editors are,
happens.
yeah, it happens. Editors are not perfect.
Mhm.
So, you know, and to me, like when I'm reading a book, especially if it's a really famous author, because, famous authors that have major publishing companies, the backing of a major publishing company, they don't have one editor. They have tons of editors. They've got developmental editors and uh, uh, there's several
Yeah,
different editors. I'm kind of
copy
losing
edits
copy
and
edits.
proofing and all that. Mhm.
Yeah. And so, like, to me, it's almost like, ooh, I found something the editor missed, you know? And so like, I don't understand. I can understand why they would get, you know, enraged if there were 20 typing errors in a book, but I just don't get that upset if I guess especially in indie authors, and maybe it's because I'm an author myself, I can kind of look past that because I know how
Right.
expensive editors can be. You know, I don't make a lot of money off like my editor makes more money off my books than I do. So, you know, so yeah, so I guess
Right.
I can look past stuff like that.
Thanks for joining us on the Bookish Introverts podcast, where together we explore the worlds within the pages. Until next time, stay bookish.